Good morning, and yeah, happy mid-January already. Hard to believe, right? Yeah. So we will continue our journey into working in ways that support our lymphatic system. Um, we will repeat a lot of the things we did last week, but we'll continue to build on, and over time we will more and more do the work with movement rather than using our hands a lot. But always know that using the hands is an option. If there's a movement that you don't like, you could always say, oh, okay, she's working on this or that area, I could just use my hands instead. We might do some things with a chair today, so if that's not comfortable for you, that's a really nice backup plan. All right, welcome to those who are popping in. Hi. All right, so for our opening centering then, I invite you to find a comfortable seat, or you could lie down, and as always, just really support your body in a really kind and compassionate way. So if you're in a seat, that might mean that you have something under your sits bones to lift the hips up high enough so that the top of the hips is higher than your knees. That's just more auspicious for your knees. And if you're lying down on the ground, maybe bring a rolled blanket or some kind of support under the knees that will relieve any strain in the hip joint, but it'll also take pressure off the low back. So if you're prone to having some low back issues, putting something under the knees is just a kind and compassionate thing for you to do for your body. And then if you are lying down, maybe a blanket under the head, reaching all the way down though to that transition between the neck and the upper back. And it's nice to have a blanket that can sort of go this far. You can sort of imagine me being on the ground. This is a little thick, but you could have something that tapers a little bit. So just seeing that we have some newbies, so a little bit more explanation about that this morning. And then as you've made your decisions about what shape to choose this morning, do invite yourself to settle into that shape, and just know that if something about it turns out not to feel right along the way, you can always mindfully shift and move your body into a different position. It's not a good idea to freeze into place if something doesn't feel good. I know in some traditions that's how things are taught, but that's not what we embrace here. And so as you settle in, perhaps you are now at a point where it might make sense to begin to consider how you would like to place your eyes. Maybe if your environment is appropriate for it, your eyes could softly close. That's not necessary. You could also have the eyes gently open, perhaps with a soft gaze point. In fact, the eyes sometimes can be open, but your focus, your visual focus, can still turn inward. And so just ponder these options and then choose what fits for you this morning. And you might also consider how you would like to place your hands. Palms and heart open, or palms down for some grounding, or palms at the heart for introspection. Just notice what seems appropriate to you. And if you're not sure, just choose one and then see how that resonates. And having given yourself ample time to settle in, perhaps it feels like the right moment to tune into your body, to tune inward, to notice your physicality from the inside out. Opening your heart and your mind to any sensations that are emerging from within. And perhaps today, given our focus on our lymphatic system, tune in particular to the fluidity within your body. There's always a gentle flowing throughout your being, quite literally in terms of fluids, but there are other flows and fluidities that we'll talk about. But right now you might just notice actual flowing of blood or lymph through your body. Even synovial fluid moving through your joints. All these beautiful ways in which fluids in your body support your health and well-being. Carrying nutrients, taking away waste products, nourishing your cells. All these beautiful functions. And so take another moment or two to just simply tune into that flow inside of you that supports you all the time. Interestingly, fluids in the body are considered connective tissue, but when you start thinking about it, it makes sense that we think of them as connective tissue because they connect everything in your body to everything else. Your blood connects all cells, and so does your lymphatic fluid. And so as you tune into that flowing, that fluidity, also ponder how that connects everything within you together, nourishing your entire inner web of being. And you might notice that the breath can flow as well, as you perhaps begin to tune into how your exhalations and inhalations are unfolding for you today. Air flowing into the nose, turning into breath there, cleansed and warmed, pressurized, flowing then into your lungs. Breath flowing out from your lungs, through your airways, into the nose, and then moving, flowing out of the nose, returning to air. Another flowing inward and outward that happens all day long to nourish you, support you. And so stay attuned for a moment to that fluidity in body and breath. And then tune in perhaps to the reality that even your thoughts and emotions, your mind can have fluidity. A fluid mind is open to learning, unlearning, and relearning. A fluid mind is not rigid. It connects new dots all the time. It can change course. It can nourish you. And so you can cultivate fluidity even in your mind, in your thoughts, in the stories that you tell yourself about your life. In your emotions, as you notice they're coming and going, they're flowing into your awareness and flowing out of your awareness. We are very fluid beings, adaptable, resilient. And your wisest layer of self, that deeper intelligence, understands this. It understands the fluidity within you and the fluidity around you. It understands fluidity in relationships, in contexts. And it can invite that wisdom into your thoughts, into your breath, and into your body. This deeply fluid intelligence is uniquely human. It is our capacity to think through things, to understand things, to connect the dots, to put things together, and from there to move fluidly and resiliently through the world. This fluid intelligence also supports our deeper inner joy. And even joy is fluid in the sense that it's infectious. It spreads from one person to the next. It connects us all in this greater web of life. And so as we work with our lymphatic system today, stay connected to this sense of fluidity that it can symbolize, this deep sense of connection you have to yourself and to everyone and everything around you. And from that place, I invite you, if it serves you, to place your hands to your heart as you bow your head to your heart. To tune in, to see whether from the fluidity of your deeper intelligence, an intention arises for you that can inform your time on the mat and beyond. This could be a simple word, it could be a phrase, it could be a felt sense or an image, or it could simply be an empty space where an intention might emerge later. Whatever shows up for you, if you would like, you could wait patiently for your next inhalation to flow in. To invite that intention into your heart. To let it flow through the entirety of your being, your body, your breath, your mind, your wisdom, your joy. And then you might choose with your next exhalation to send that intention silently outward, letting it flow into your community of choice. And then whenever you feel ready to do so, you can lower your hands if they were lifted. You can open your eyes if they were closed. You can lift your gaze if it was lowered, and you can rise to a seat if you are lying on the earth. Maybe moving very fluidly to a seat, staying very aware of this way that you can connect to yourself so lovingly and compassionately. And then once you have found your seat, just take a moment to gently take a few shoulder circles forward and then back. And as you find these shoulder circles, they don't have to be big, they can be very gentle, but let them be as fluid as they possibly can. Now you may be like me, I have little hitches and glitches when I do this that don't feel fluid at all. But the more you do this, the more fluid your tissue becomes over time because it gets nourished with fluids that are coursing through your body and that you're encouraging to flow here. And as you take a few more of these shoulder circles, begin to draw your attention to the region of your collarbones, your clavicles. You could even very gently bring your fingertips to the collarbones. And if you're coordinated enough to do so and keep the shoulder circles going, do that. If you need to do one or the other, then choose. And then very gently begin, if you can add yet another thing, this is going to be a great brain exercise. You could start tapping your fingers into that little soft spot above the collarbones and keep the motion going. Can you tell how hard that is? It seems like that shouldn't be so tricky, but your brain is not used to, or your brain doesn't really like multitasking, and in a way that's what you're asking it to do. And so for now, let's let the shoulder circles end and let that tapping become foremost in our mind. And maybe just feel how tight or how soft your skin is here. Noticing any unusual tensions, not to fix them, but just to be present. To learn what's happening in your body here as you very gently tap that soft spot above the collarbones, above the clavicles. And then if you would like, you could take your hands and just bring them gently a little bit higher along your neck and make some very gentle stroking motions from the ears, perhaps with Spock hands, 2 fingers in front, 2 fingers behind the ear, to brush this region at the neck. And when I say brush here, I'm talking about a very light touch. If you were here last week, you learned that our lymphatic system is like our cardiovascular system in that it ends in tiny, tiny, tiny little lymphatic capillaries that take up the fluid out of your cells. And those are so tiny that a motion that's too harsh or too hard can actually I don't think it would crush it. Sometimes I've heard people say that it can crush the capillaries, but I think you'd really have to be very forceful. But just work with a certain gentleness here. And then let the fingers land below the collarbones and stroke very gently toward the region of the heart, which is a little bit to your left in the chest. If you can do this on your bare skin, that's going to be more effective than if you do it across your clothing, but whatever feels comfortable for you. I'm just kind of basically using my fingertips. You could use the tips of your thumb. And then maybe bring the fingers above the collarbones and the thumbs below, and again, stroke across. Now the right hand can travel a little bit farther to come toward the heart. Interestingly, the right side of your lymphatic system collects from a much smaller region than the left side. The right side of that very important region here of lymph nodes just collects like this section of your body, if you can see what I'm doing here. It's like half of your head to your chest and then over and to the right arm. And the left collects everything else. Isn't that amazing? So it's really interesting. There's less fluid, obviously, that has to drain from the right. And so just to be very explicit, we're starting at the clavicles, at the collarbones, because of hydrodynamics, the dynamics of fluid. Fluid travels from high pressure to low pressure. And all the fluid that the lymph collects in your body has to travel to the heart, toward the heart, I should say, into this vein that goes back to the heart, both on the left and the right. And so we want to make sure that this channel here is clear before we start bringing fluid in from the edges. Because we want the pressure to be low here, so that just naturally lymph from all directions will flow toward this region. And so now let's come back to some shoulder circles, because now, even if you leave your fingers there, or especially if you leave your fingers there, you can begin to notice how much movement actually supports lymphatic flow, because what you just did very gently with your fingers, you can accomplish with these shoulder circles. You can make it even more effective, maybe, by bringing your arms into cactus and then moving them behind you as you inhale, any amount, you don't have to go far, and in front of you, as you exhale, you could even curl forward and use the fluidity of your breath here, flowing open with the inhale and flowing forward with the exhale, to bring extra motion into this region of the clavicle. And your mind could fluidly stay focused on this region of the collarbones. Now, of course, you're not only moving lymphatic fluid there now, you're working beyond that area, but that area is getting a nice massage through this motion, and lymph can really flow into those veins below your clavicles, cleverly called the subclavian veins. So a couple more times here. Really use that imagery of channeling lymphatic fluid toward your heart. And then after the end of your second time, you can release the hands and maybe just tune into the fluidity in your body that continues even as your movement has stopped. So we cleared this area first, and then we started to work a little bit with the neck. And so the lymph nodes that are behind the ear are really important to draining fluid out of your brain during the day, but especially at night. We talked about that a little bit last week, this whole idea of lymphatic drainage that happens at night. So we want to keep these channels as clear as possible too. And so bring your fingers to your chin. And those of you who've been with me for a while, you know where I'm headed. You're going to slightly tuck the chin down, not a lot. You're not going to compress your thyroid. But you'll just tuck down a little bit, and then you'll draw the ears toward the back plane of the body to bring the head as much in line with the spine as is possible and comfortable for you. And then from that very centered position, gently turn your head to the left or the right, doesn't matter if you started already on the other side. As you exhale, and then with the inhalation, bring it forward. So it's a very slow movement, right? You're flowing with the breath, switching sides with each exhalation. And let yourself continue with that visualization now, where you can now add the idea that, fluid is draining from the head, through the neck, through the region of the collarbones, toward the heart. The next time you have turned your head to the opposite side than where you started, so if you started left with me, that means to the right. When you come back, keep the head at center and take a few rounds of conscious breath. With each breath, knowing that you are moving lymphatic fluid. And I mean that in a very concrete way, as some of you already know, and as we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a moment. And then recenter your head. So you could slightly tuck the chin. You can use your fingers as a prompt. You don't have to. And then you draw the head back. And then from here, imagine that you are drawing your right ear toward the sky. This will naturally drop the left ear toward the shoulders, and then look with your eyeballs in the same direction as the right ear. So look toward the ceiling, sort of diagonally up. This actually helps with that movement of drawing the right ear toward the shoulders, and then feel the stretch, I guess, in the right side of your neck. You could even take your right hand and draw it away from you, and that will increase that sensation. Bring the head back to center. Bring the hand back if you stretched it to the side, and just feel the flow through the right side of the neck. And then whenever you feel ready, rearrange your head. Don't assume that it stayed where you had it before. So tuck and draw back. And then do the same thing to leaning the head to the right by drawing the left ear and the left eyes toward the ceiling. I'm very deliberate about using the movement coming from the ear and the eyes as opposed to dropping the ear to the head, because this will really bring more of your attention into the fluidity of the side that is lengthened rather than the side that is contracted. Take a couple rounds of breath and stay very connected in your imagination to this flow of fluid, maybe using your left hand or your left arm out to the side to feel that sensation even more so. And then with an inhalation, wait patiently for that. You can lift the head back to center and tune in to the flow that you might feel through the sides of your neck. Realign yet again, so tuck and draw back. Turn the head to the left. Just a comfortable range of motion. You don't have to try to get the chin over your left shoulder. It's probably not going to happen. So you've turned to the left. Now imagine drawing the right ear toward the earth. this one's complicated, folks. So really step by step. So you turn the head to the left. Now you're drawing the head so that you're kind of side bending. And now you're going to nod the head yes. This is going to be a tiny, tiny movement. There won't be a lot of range of motion here. This is really wonderful for moving lymphatic fluid, but this can also be a great way to give yourself an alignment at the level of the axis, which is the top vertebra where it meets the skull. This is barely noticeable on the outside, but this can be profoundly helpful for headaches and not just for moving lymph. And then you can stop the nodding, then bring the head upright, and then turn the head forward. If that didn't make a whole lot of sense yet, it will come to you after a while. Remind me to do it again next week. We're only going to do this one time to each side. So tuck, draw back, and then turn the head to the right. So just straight to the right, staying basically parallel to the floor. Just as far as feels comfortable, not a huge range of motion. And then drop the left ear toward the earth. So you're kind of side bending while the neck is turned. And now you're nodding yes. Yes, as in, yes, I embrace the fluidity here in my neck. Yes, I embrace this weird motion. It's going to be very small. But this is really a wonderful therapeutic movement. And when you've enjoyed that therapeuticness, made up a word, you can stop with the nodding. So reverse out the way you came in, right? Then you bring the head upright, so you take out the side bend, and then you turn it to the front, and you take away the rotation. And now sense into your neck region. You might actually, well, I won't say what you might feel. Let yourself feel what's there, rather than me drawing your attention to it. Just bring your own attention and awareness to your neck. And then, we're going to come back to a few shoulder circles. That's a great place to return to, because then every time we have worked one of the farther away regions, this will clear this region around the collarbones nicely out again. From here, what you'll then do is you'll stop the shoulder circles and you'll take a few shoulder shrugs. So shoulders up toward the ears, and then really quickly and loosely down. We don't often do this in yoga where we move this rapidly, but here just let that kind of very fluidly. So nice gentle shrug up and a nice whooshing downward flow of the shoulders. And with that, just imagine that you're kind of pumping lymphatic fluid through this region that we've already worked. And by now, some of you may remember the third area we want to clear is the area around the axilla, the armpit, because you have chains of lymph nodes here too. And so you could do this by hand. This is what we did a lot last time. Again, if you feel comfortable reaching in onto your skin, do that. And you can just very gently do that same sort of stroking motion that you did at the neck. You can do it from basically the side of the armpit toward, you guessed it, toward the heart. Do that a couple of times or more on each side, knowing that when you come from the right armpit, you're going to draw all the way across the sternum toward the left, because the heart is a little bit more on the left. It's not directly in the center of your chest. For a bonus, you could also stroke high enough to bring the fingers above and below the collarbones and then drop down. And then do that again on the left a couple of times, and then a couple more times on the right. So now you're stimulating the lymphatic flow through those tiny little capillaries where there are all of these lymph nodes in your armpits. And of course, for people with a history of breast cancer, this can be a very sensitive area because you may have had lymph nodes removed, you may have had a whole chain of nodes removed. This may be an area of edema or fibrosis for you, so work double gently here. And I should have said this earlier, if you have lymphatic fluid collecting somewhere, you never want to work with harshness in those regions. We're tempted sometimes, ooh, I have edema in my fingers, and we brush really hard. By now you know that's not a good idea. And you always start at the clavicles first. Now we're going to use some motion to activate the flow of lymph here. We'll start with chicken wings, so hands to the shoulders. Yeah, or you can simply continue to stroke the region with your hands, whatever feels good for you. You may have noticed that all of my circling in the shoulders always goes toward the back rather than coming forward like this. And that's because that actually supports better posture. We're so slumped forward all day long that when we make shoulder circles, this is one way that we can reset our posture to create an open heart, which of course is the theme for February. So all of this just comes back to you over and over, just in a slightly different context. Now, if you would like to let go of your arms, you could make circles now with these cactus arms that we used earlier just to open and close. And again, as you engage in these movements, right, imagine all the fluidity here that's happening, not just in how you move, but in how your blood is flowing, how your lymph is flowing, how your synovial fluid is moving through your joints. And you might notice we have the elbows flexed or bent, right? That's great because anytime we bend and flex a joint, we move fluid through it. And since there are lymph nodes all along the arm, we are now starting to drain fluid not just out of the armpit area, but we're also draining fluid through the arms. And so you could stop for a moment and give yourself a palpable stroking through the arms. If you have, bare skin, that's even better. And gently stroking now from the region of the elbow to the armpit and, yes, toward the heart. And like if you can reach all the way around your arm, front and back, moving fluid through this region. If you had lymph nodes removed here, the lymphatic chains tend to reroute themselves, and over time they are just fine in collecting lymph again. Now let's do the other arm. But the thing is that they may reroute themselves in strange ways. For some women who had nodes removed, the fluid reroutes itself like almost through the lower part of the body and then gets pumped up, or it reroutes itself across the chest. It used to be thought that it has to reroute in the very area, but lymphatic fluid knows better. It goes where it has the easiest access. And so this is why no matter where you had lymph nodes removed, you want to work the entire body, both sides, because you may actually get benefit from a region that you would never think would give you benefit because it's pretty far away from your surgery site. So, all right. And then you could hold both arms up if they're getting kind of tired by now. You could have your elbows by your side. That's perfectly fine. You now know that fluid can flow against gravity because it goes to low pressure. But if you want to, you can keep your arms up and make things a little easier for the fluid and begin to open and close your fists. Now you're starting to pump some fluid through the wrist and even through the fingers toward the heart. Now, if you want to give your brain a little bit of a task here, then one time you close the fist, the thumb is in, the next time it's out. You can also feel that this gives you different compression in your fingers, and so you may actually move fluid slightly differently, whether the thumb is in or out. But it also gives your brain something, or your mind, I should say, something to attend to. So it tends to be less spaced out or bored. Now, if you really want to get creative, and I'm not even going to try to show this, you could have thumb in on one hand and thumb out on the other, and really drive yourself wild. So someday, maybe not when you're on video, I'm trying. I said I wouldn't try, but I'm trying, but I can't do it and talk and show. So, yeah, but anyway, and then you could make a few wrist circles. And maybe add some fluidity into the fingers. You're making little waves with your fingers while you're doing circles. Yeah. And then you could even add arm movement to that. You see, you can get totally creative because all you're really doing is moving fluid, and fluid can flow through all directions of channels. So wherever you put the channels, fluid will move. All right. And then maybe let the motion just get a little bit smaller, ultimately coming back to your shoulder circles. And so, as I talked about last week, for those of you who weren't here, if you ever have, or if you often have edema in the hands, don't be tempted to start the work there, but start the work at the region of the clavicles, clear the neck, clear the axilla, clear the upper arm, clear the lower arm, and then clear the fingers last. And you may have way more luck in removing that lymphedema that way. If you have a lot of edema in the hands, once you've cleared the channel, a great way to work with even the edema in the fingers is first to clear out fluid between these metacarpals, these bones in your hand. Now, if you have a lot of edema, you probably will not see these grooves because they'll be all swollen. If you don't see the veins in your hand and you don't see these grooves or these bones, you probably have some lymph stuck here. And here you can work a little bit more, with a little bit more depth. So you can maybe see, and I'm doing this on both sides. I'm doing it with my thumb on the inside and then my index finger on the outside. And just move from finger to finger. Slowly and gently clearing out these channels. And don't forget the channel between the thumb and the index finger. You could also do this like this, where you bring the opposite fingers into the grooves on the palm side and then on the back of the hand side. And then don't forget to do your other side. So start with one groove at a time. And you can do the same thing for your feet. Interestingly, nature is so fascinating. Your hands and your feet have very similar construction in terms of how many bones there are and how the bones are structured together to make a foot or a hand. It's just that these bones are longer in your feet and these are longer in your hands. And so you have short toes and long feet and short palms and long fingers. But the construction is the same. And so you can do this same work at your feet, because we won't get there today, but you may decide after class is over to also clear your feet. And then maybe just end this with a little bit more fun in the fingers, maybe another circle or two in the wrist, maybe another circle or two of the axilla, and maybe a bit of neck work and some attention to the clavicles. So we've been really focusing again on this upper part of the body, but according to some, about 75% of your lymph nodes are in this upper region of the body, so it's actually an important region to clear. But the next region we'll work with is this region of your abdomen. If you were to find your belly button and the bottom of your sternum, the bottom of your breastbone, about halfway between those 2 points, there is a big collection, very deep internally, of lymph nodes called the cisterna chyli, if you're interested. You don't have to be, but just know that there's a large number of lymph nodes. We talked about these last week, but I think repetition's a good thing. And the really fascinating thing is that this is also the region where your diaphragm moves when you breathe. So your diaphragm spanning the base of your rib basket, and when you inhale, that contraction of the diaphragm downward displaces all of the organs. So everything inside of your abdomen has to move when you inhale. And through that movement of the diaphragm and the relocation of the organs, you are massaging the lymph nodes in this region. You're helping those lymphatic capillaries in that region absorb more fluid out of the intercellular spaces. And you're helping the pumping upward of that lymphatic fluid through this very large thoracic duct all the way up to the clavicles. So just breathing alone, right, helps move a lot of lymphatic fluid. This is where all of the lymphatic fluid first ends up from your lower body, and then from here it is pumped up. So you could think about just breathing, supporting lymphatic flow. Last week we did a little bit of extra contraction here on the exhalation to sort of draw those low ribs in and create a little extra movement. Today we're going to do that with some gentle twisting. So when we rotate our rib basket side to side, and you can let the hips move freely into that movement. You could do this standing if you're kind of tired of sitting, or seated if you've been standing. You are actually, you hope probably you can feel this, right? What you're moving here is that very region of the cisterna chyli, and you could of course use some of your arm movements here. You could even use some of the tapping motions that we sometimes do. Now you're realizing, oh, when we do this tapping on the adrenal glands in the back, we also tap the region of the lymph nodes by the opposite clavicle. And now you know that just gentle tapping can support the flow of lymphatic fluid. Now your imagination has to work a little bit harder, because now you have to imagine not just fluid draining downward toward the heart, but now you're actually also draining fluid upward to the heart. Wow, wild, right? Why does fluid not drain back again with gravity? Well, nature's wise, and it put little one-way valves all along your lymphatic channels. So once fluid has moved up, if it tries to flow back, those little valves just sort of close down and the fluid can't get past. So once you've helped it move up, it won't return to where it came from. So a couple more rounds, and then maybe let the arms swing freely for a while if they were tapping. And maybe be amazed that you can swing the arms by your side, and yet you're still pumping lymphatic fluid because of those one-way channels, right? So you don't have to hold the arms up. That makes things easier because now gravity is working with the fluid in the arms, but you can be wherever you are. So one beautiful thing that we just did unknowingly, or maybe not so unknowingly, is as we were turning, especially if you were standing and you allowed the hips to move, you might notice that you also moved a little bit in the region of your hip creases or your groins, where you have yet another collection of lymph nodes. These are your inguinal lymph nodes, because there's a ligament here called the inguinal ligament. This is like an inguinal area. So these lymph nodes are your inguinal lymph nodes, or linguinal lymph nodes if you want. I always end up saying that. So one way we can really help move lymphatic fluid in this region, and now you all have to stand up even, well, if you can. If you need to be seated, you can be seated, is through moving our hip joint. Most of the lymph node collections are around major joints that have to move a lot. That too is a very clever design, because whenever you then move those joints around those lymph nodes, you automatically also support lymphatic fluid flow. And so you don't have to go as fast as I am. I'm just kind of doing that for demonstration. You could move very slowly. And then at some point, stay leaning forward and just notice if you're maintaining a nice natural curve in your spine and not overly rounding. You don't want to do this forward movement from a really rounded back. You want to have a nice natural spine. My jacket's like way too lumpy here to show this, but yeah, can't show it, doesn't matter. Anyway, by now you know this anyway. If you have a chair nearby, you could bring your hands to a chair. If you don't have a chair nearby, you can just let the arms dangle. That will work just as well. The chair is kind of extra balance. I'll show this with the chair. And then from here, what you can do is you can bring the left arm up and overhead and bend the right knee a lot, which will also increase the flexion in your hip joint. And think about where fluid is moving. And you can come up and down, or you can stay, whatever feels better for you. More motion means more movement, more fluidity. And right now we're just going to go to one side repeatedly rather than alternating sides, and just really feel, okay, where is fluid moving? Well, by moving the arm, you could even turn the head into the direction of the lifted hand. You're realizing you're moving fluid everywhere. And then switch sides. Hand on the chair or on an imaginary chair. Letting now the left knee, if you're going to the right, letting the left knee bend, right? Making more flexion in the hip joint. And notice all the fluid moving as you bring the arm up and down. And of course, you might have noticed that now we are also moving one of the knee joints along with the hip joints and everything else that's flowing. And you have a nice collection of lymph nodes in the back of the knee. This is the popliteal area, and therefore these lymph nodes are called your popliteal lymph nodes. And you are nicely helping them now, or helping fluid now to move toward those lymph nodes and away from them to the next batch. So we are encouraging a lot of flow of fluid into and out of lymph nodes. You don't really palpate or press on the lymph nodes themselves. You're working on the vessels around them. Next time you come down with your arm, just take a moment to rest. Notice if you're still in a nice neutral spine. And then when you are ready to do so, wait for an inhalation. Bring the arms either to your low back to rise up, or if you would like, out to the side to rise back up to standing. And we'll just do a little bit more movement for the hips and the knees. You might want a chair or a wall next to you so that you can have one hand on a chair or a wall for balance. And we are going to make hip circles. But we're going to do the same thing that we did with our arms at the same time that we moved our shoulder, we also moved our elbow joint. So we're doing the same thing here with our hip circles. So the knee bends as you come up, and then the leg straightens. So sometimes we do the circles and we keep the knee bent the whole time, right? This time we're bending and straightening. Bending and straightening. And again, you could have your hand on a chair or a wall to do this. Next time you come down, reverse. In the hip joint, we reverse. Imagine the flow of fluid here, pumping upward. One more circle, and then bring your weight into that leg. Maybe shift the hand that you're using for balance, and then start the circle on the other side, bending the knee on the way up as the hip flexes, straightening the hip joint and the knee joint on the way down. Keep that imagery alive of moving fluid from your entire body pretty much now toward the heart. Maybe your breath is moving a little more forcefully now, pumping in that region of the cisterna chyli too, at the center of the body. It's ready for it because we cleared it with our twists. Did we switch directions? No, let's switch directions. The interesting thing about your legs is that your lymphatic chains on the lower legs are distributed across all of the leg. And then after they converge on those lymph nodes behind the knee, they actually come to the front of the thigh because everything has to come to the groins. So if you use your hands to move lymphatic fluid here, you move through the back of the knee where the nodes are very gently, and then you let the hands come to the top of the thigh to bring the fluid toward the groin. With the arm, we did all sides. Remember that? On the upper arm, on the leg, we just move on work at the top of the thigh. And so just gently do that on both sides. You can brush through the lower leg all the way around. Then the hands and channels, vessels of the lymphatic system converge in the back of the knee, and then toward the front and into the groin region. Yeah. Now we can also very effectively get some of the same movement by lifting and lowering onto our toes. And you could have your hands on a wall or on the back of a chair here. If you want to make this a little bit more exciting, then you could lift to the toes on one movement and then lift to the heels on the other movement. And to the toes, and to the heels, and to the toes, and to the heels. And you might feel that when you lift the toes, you're really stretching the back of the leg. And when you're lifting to the toes, you're kind of engaging everything. If you have a little rebounder at home, that's perfect for moving lymphatic fluid. If you don't have one, then these toe and heel lifts will give you a very similar movement. What's happening is that your calf muscles are working a lot here, and your calf muscles are sometimes called the second heart because they work they have like little pumping action. They're not a pump like your heart, but through their movement, they pump fluid upward toward the heart, whether that's blood or lymph. And so working your calf muscles is really, really wonderful for creating that fluidity in your body. And then gently begin to let that movement end. And maybe sit or stand. I'll come to my knees so you can see my head quietly for a moment. And once again, feel into the fluidity of your body. Maybe this time there's a little more vibrancy or vitality in that imagination as you feel fluid moving up through the lower body, fluid moving inward and downward through the upper body, through the extremities, everything converging on this region of the heart. From there to be redistributed back out into the body. And so you could even close your eyes and just imagine fluidity within you. Literal fluid moving all the time. Pumped through every movement you make, through every breath. Helping filter out pathogens, distribute nutrients, moving waste. A wise system of fluid management. Most of the time this works entirely outside of our awareness. But it's when we have challenges like lymphedema, swelling, tightness, puffiness, that we can take our beautiful prefrontal cortex to take some conscious action to support this flow that normally happens, and that always happens so naturally. If you are still standing, I invite you to ponder where you might like to take your closing meditation, your shavasana, and maybe come to a seat or come to the earth to settle yourself down. And as you settle either into your lying down position or your seated position, invite your body to release and let go. You have given a lot of tender, compassionate care to your body. You can now simply surrender the body to the force of gravity, allowing it to release and let go where holding is not necessary, allowing the earth, your chair, your floor to hold you. And then take a moment to tune into the fluidity of your breath. Perhaps deeply appreciative of each inhalation and exhalation. And perhaps deeply amazed by the work your entire respiratory system does beyond just breathing, how it contributes to your fluidity overall. Your breath too happens mostly outside of your consciousness. And so for now, I invite you to surrender the flow of your breath to the greater flow of life force that connects us all, fluidly, lovingly, compassionately. Take a moment to tune into the fluidity in your mind, thoughts and emotions coming and going. And invite them to simply to be present, surrendering them to your deeper inner wisdom that will bring you back to what needs coming back to at the end of practice. And then embracing your deeper inner intelligence and that seed of joy that lies within all of us. I invite you into about a minute of silence until my voice brings you back. Very gently invite your senses to reawaken. Noticing the sounds around you, air brushing your skin, the texture of your clothing, the earth beneath you, sensations arising from within you, perhaps sensing yet again into that deeper fluidity in your body, your breath, and your mind. Notice if little stretches or wiggles seem important right now, or if you'd rather continue to rest the body in quietude. Notice if you'd like to take a conscious breath in and out. And then if you're lying on the earth, ponder whether you would like to stay there or whether you would like to close the practice in a seat. And if you'd like to sit, this would be a great time to transition. And if you would like, you could place your hands yet again to your heart as you bow your head to your heart. Tuning in one more time. Noticing body, breath, mind, their shared fluidity, their deep connection to one another. And then notice if there is something that you connected with today during this practice, some takeaway that you would like to use to connect your practice on the mat to your life off the mat. Maybe that takeaway blends with your intention from the beginning of class to create a dedication of the merit from your time on the mat that you will take with you to allow your practice to serve a greater purpose. If such a dedication arises for you, you might choose to use your next inhalation to settle it into your own heart, allowing it from there to flow through the entirety of your being. And you might choose to use your next exhalation to send that dedication silently outward, inviting it to flow into all of the communities to which you are connected. And as always, thank you so much for being part of this beautiful Thursday morning community.